Hello fellow Bluebaggers and welcome back to another review, and of course this time it is the game, the dreaded loss to the Doggies in round 18, and got a few things to say about this game. So before we do that, let's just have a quick look as we will be doing, as is tradition. We'll move across to the team stats for both teams, see the full breakdown. Obviously, final scores 14-16, 100 the Bulldogs against us 12-14, 86, falling short by 14 points in the end. And as we scroll down here, looking at the stats, if you didn't know the scoreline, you'd probably say that, you'd probably guess that we won. I mean, we won disposals. We had, 25 more disposals, more kicks overall, more handballs. Only real stat that's looking through that we got smashed in was the inside 50s, 56-47. Stoppage-wise, we ended up winning the hit-outs 49-37. Clearances 43-42. Pretty even across the board there. Possession-wise, 6 more contested possessions, 18 more uncontested. We had a few more turnovers. Marks, we ended up having more marks, which I found quite surprising. Didn't think that would be the case. Watching live at the game, 98-84. More marks inside 50 again, which I thought would be reversed. Contested marks even as well in our favour. Tackles, we ended up having 6 more tackles. They had more tackles inside 50, so on and so forth. So I guess by and large, looking at that, without knowing the score, you'd probably say that, more than likely we would have won. Probably speaks to, I guess, the, how small the margin was to an extent. But again, looking at the breakdown in quarter by quarter, we started like a house on fire, similar to the Giants, 3-4, 22 to the Bulldogs, 7 behinds. Granted, I will admit they were missing some easy shots on goal, so probably should have been, at least evens at quarter time. Then they were able to kick 7 goals 2 in the second quarter to our 4 goals 2, which is pretty inexcusable, to put it lightly. Like, to have that, such a poor defence, just leaking goals left, right and centre, was just inexcusable. Third quarter, they kicked 4 goals 5, and we kicked 3 goals 4. And then the last quarter, it was 3 goals 2 in their favour to our 2 goals 4. So just wasn't good enough really across the board. So let's just have a look in terms of some of the things that I've noted down, and we'll go through that. So I guess as a whole, to summarise this game, I would say frustration is probably the word to sum it up. You could probably sum it up with quite a few more words, but I'm definitely more frustrated than what I was in the loss to the Giants. Reason being was, first and foremost, I think, and it's something that I highlighted in the preview video leading into this game, it was the second consecutive week where we've had to face a side outside the top 8 with their backs against the wall who had to be desperate enough to win to keep within the touch of the top 8. And we had to, in return, show the same sort of desperation, or at least match it, and go on to win. And, it was only a few weeks ago that we were on a 5-match winning streak. But looking back to then, what we showed, it just wasn't evident in this game at all. And the Dogs, they came out with, that intent, the spirit to win. And what do we have? Well, nothing really. Like, we lacked desperation, we lacked the intent, lacked the spirit, and most of all, we lacked the defence across the park, by and large. But more so in the midfield again, which is kind of becoming a little bit of a worrying trend at the moment. And it's a big deficiency in our game, and has been since the Richmond game, I reckon, to an extent there. There was sort of chinks in our armour there, where we were kind of exposed, and I guess it was our class that was able to overcome those deficiencies against a bit of a smaller, undermanned opponent in Richmond. But yeah, again, we just got shown up. Leading into the game, on paper, we should have put them away from the get-go, I think. Like, the fact that we went in strategically with an extra tall up forward should have exposed them for height. Like, Lobb was really the only 200-plus centimetre player that could have matched on either one of Harry or TDK. And, with both of those guys being in the forward line at the same time, they're undersized. All you need to do is just kick it to their heads and, overhead, and they'd mark it. But, in the end, it didn't matter having that ace up our sleeves, because I guess we can really take this, as I said, back to that game against the Tigers, and they were able to, I guess, by and large, negate our forward potency, and they really skittled our forward setup virtually via flood, and they forced our inside 50 entries to be high up and under kicks, because they were not only applying pressure to our midfielders, but also didn't really allow us the space for our forwards to let into, to kick it out in front of them. And they didn't really allow us to hit our targets in the form of Harry and Charlie. And again, we're just forced to aimlessly kick high up and unders, and a lot of the time it was either spalled away or, hit the ground where they had, strategically, I think they had players set up behind the ball at the fall of the ball to help clear it. And it wasn't really until the game started to open up in the second half against the Tigers where we got a bit more space and fluency inside 50. But, the Giants, I'm pretty much convinced they kind of saw that as a bit of a blueprint, and they used a very similar strategy against our forward line and against specifically our two forward, potent talls in Charlie and Harry, and they too did a number on us, I guess defensively speaking, against us. And, talking about this game specifically, we should have outmatched them, outclassed them. The Dogs utilised that strategy where they flooded back, and, every time we had the ball ticking inside 50, we were just looking sideways again, and it was kind of that deja vu where we were lacking confidence, lacking structure. They were double teaming Charlie as well, similar thing to what the Giants did. It looked good early, mind you. I mean, Harry was marking them. He was kicking goals. Him and Owies, just a 1-2 punch. It looked really good. But after that, they really just clamped down and flooded our forward line with almost like a bit of a team defence set up. So there was that by and large. But they obviously lost Treloar right before the first bounce, which put them back in the midfield quite massively. And Norton wasn't playing up forward. In defence, they didn't have Liam Jones, who was not past fit to play. So across the park, they were undermanned, not at full strength. Compared to us, obviously having lost Gov, big pivotal loss there. Again, on paper, we should have trounced them. Breaking it down, I think where the stats don't tell the full tale, as I went to before. Like, it doesn't say anything in terms of discrepancies in the midfield, which is where we were beat quite well. And similar to what the Giants did, they absolutely throttled us every single time in the stoppages. And I think by and large, our lack of defensive work in the midfield is what really, really saw us come undone. And there were so many times where the Bulldogs, even if we won the hit out, they were able to shark the ball and just almost seamlessly run through our non-existent defence. It's like we almost had like the confidence of setting up goal side where we were like, yep, okay, we're gonna win the ball. It doesn't matter about like don't be accountable. There's no need to be accountable, which was ridiculous. And they would get the ball and just absolutely like a hot knife through butter. So many times where they just steam through and kick for goal, or hit up a teammate inside 50, and it was just so hard to watch, and just not good enough, really. I mean, very concerning. And it was really the absence of Hewitt, who obviously was left out of the side, that was certainly felt here. We all know Hewitt's a really, really well-drilled defensive midfielder. That part of his game is the A+. And we really needed someone in that mould to help us out, really, because it just was not working at all. Against the Giants last week, I said, you can kind of excuse that as a loss that we needed to have, a bit of a tune-up, if you will. But, it's the response that you have off the back of that is the most important. And, the lack of response that we had against the Doggies is what's really alarming to me. It's not danger territory as yet, but for a side in us that's building towards, being a credentialed side, potentially is just not good enough. And, again, it's not the end of the world. The sky's not falling, but, you need to identify the chinks in your armor early on before we get to that stage where we're on the cusp of finals and, we're still trying to adjust and still trying to fix things and patch holes. And we're at that stage where we need to hold ourselves to higher standards and be more accountable. In terms of, I guess, speaking to the ins and outs, considering, as I said, we're kind of a near full-strength side with our, best 22 bar, one or two, obviously Gov being one of those. And I guess speaking to the loss of Gov, we kind of got shown up a fair bit in defence. Weeders, of course, was absolutely insane. Incredible as always. Marchie, he came in and, it was a great opportunity for him to really stamp his authority and make his mark on being a player that is potentially, credentialed enough to be in the best 22, on the cusp. And, I think he was lacking slightly. It wasn't just him. He wasn't the only culprit. So let's move on to the inclusion of Pitt. And I'll admit I was one of those believers that potentially the two-ruck setup could work with Pitt and TDK. But in retrospect, it probably wasn't the opponent to do it against. Obviously, English is more of a mobile TDK type, not the old-school bustling, big-bodied Nankor Briggs that we've faced in previous weeks. So I think it was probably a waste to have Pitt in. And as I said, we weren't able to use TDK to stretch the Bulldogs' defence as that extra tool. Talking about, I guess, the defensive side of the game in our midfield, spoke about Georgie Hewitt and how he would have been absolutely fantastic. One guy that had an incredible game, of course, defensively was Chincotta, who ended up doing a very decent job on Bont. Probably another scalp, you could say, but again, the Dogs didn't need Bont to stand up and put the Dogs on his back and get them over the line. They did enough outside of that, especially in terms of their small forwards. And those are the ones that really did a number on us. Riley West ended up kicking 4 goals. We just could do nothing to quell him, and he was kicking them out of his ass. But Ugle-Hagan as well. He was kind of like their sole tall option up forward, and we had the caliber of players to nullify him. Double team. Similar sort of tactics that oppositions have been using on Charlie in recent weeks. And, speaking to the potency of the smalls, one guy who was completely off his game was Boyd, and which is strange enough to say because he, in terms of his disposal, he's probably one of the better disposers of the footy in our team. But I reckon his first 4 or 5 disposals were either direct turnovers or just missed the target and resulted in the Bulldogs somehow getting their hands on the ball. And it just was not working. He was so off his game, and I don't know what it was, but yeah, really hurt us. I mean, he's got enough runs on the board now to have a bit of an off game, but it just hurt when we needed, defensive smalls like him to really help us out. Yeah, in terms of, I guess, looking forward to next week and the changes that we could have against North Melbourne, I think, Georgie Boy Hewitt, he definitely needs to come in. In terms of ruck, I think we probably go with just TDK. Against Cherry, he's probably a little bit of a hybrid. He's kind of like the new age ruckman, slash a bit of a bulking type. But I do think, Cherry does enough around the ground, much like TDK, to really allow TDK to match him with that. In terms of others to come in, spoken enough about Hewitt as well. On the weekend in the VFL, He ended up finishing with 33 disposals, 1 goal, 10 tackles, if you don't mind. So he is 100% in. Jack Carroll, potentially in calculations, 29 disposals. Outside of that, I would say with Williams, I'm expecting him to obviously be out and not pull up fit for this coming round. So I would 100% say Motlop needs to come in. Probably should have come in on the weekend, reward for form. And then outside of that, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think Gov's going to be fit enough to take his place back in the team ahead of Marchbank, so Marchbank probably gets a bit of a reprieve. But those are probably my main candidates. It's probably a good thing that I will say that we're facing North Melbourne after a couple of disappointing losses against a bit of a minnow side. No disrespect at all to North Melbourne because they've been showing some nice form in recent weeks, but I think it gives us an opportunity to really work on these deficiencies in our game and, have more of a proper tune-up. Because I do think that if we were facing another team outside the 8 or just inside the 8 that has their back against the wall again, that needs to win, that are desperate, like the Giants, like the Dogs, I would be hesitant to say that we would be able to win. I think it's there's a psychological aspect to it as well, I think. Definitely with that because, we've got the talent. We've got a relatively fit team, knock on wood, bar Gov and maybe a couple of others. But no major outs, which is good. And we're just not performing to that level of where we should be. Are we a top 4 side? Look at the ladder and, we are. But we're very, very lucky. We're very lucky that, the likes of Freo lost, Essendon lost, even Port Adelaide lost. So we've had a fair bit of luck this week from our direct opponents that could have easily either matched us on 44 points or could have, leapfrogged us. So, in summary, I guess, we know how good we can be when it's working for us, but when it's not, we just don't make the mark. We look terrible, really, to be honest. When we're comparing ourselves to, Sydney, who are probably the benchmark of the competition thus far. So we really need to work in our deficiencies and, respond. That's really the main thing. That's the main takeaway from this weekend is response. Didn't happen on the rebound from the Giants loss, so it needs to happen now. We need to be winning these sort of games against the Giants, against the Dogs. And I know that we've seen in recent weeks, Sydney have dropped their past couple of games. Even other teams, Essendon, Port, the like, they've all dropped games as well. But really, it's no excuse. We're on our own trajectory and we need to be setting these standards. So we'll see how we go from here. But fingers crossed we can respond in style with a nice win against North. Outside of that, ladies and gents, thanks as always for tuning in to another video here on the brand new channel that is Bluebaggers Edge. Of course, do appreciate all of your thoughts and comments, so leave them down below, and I would love to hear your own thoughts as well, your takeaways, key takeaways from the game, what changes you would like to see heading into next weekend's game against North, and other changes, whether it be with regards to, the style of play, changing things up, personnel, so on and so forth. So let us know. And as always, of course, if you are new to our content and channel and you are enjoying the insight analysis, everything else, discussion points, we would appreciate, of course, give us a like, give us a sub, all that sort of stuff. We do really appreciate the support. And so with that, we'll leave you with it, ladies and gents, and we'll catch you in the next video. Of course, go Baggers, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.